All right, everybody, welcome back. This is instructor Phil Demetriadis, and I'm going to do another demo for you today to talk a little bit more about the human figure. And what I want to do is, I'm really proud of you guys because when we were out drawing at downtown Disney, in our sketchbooks the other day, a lot of you guys had some really, really fantastic drawings. And I had a chance to sit with a couple students, and one of my students in particular, Connor, he's absent today, but when I was talking with Connor, something sort of hit me as he was watching me sketch. He was sitting there and he was getting stuck a little bit. So I thought I would walk you through a couple areas of drawing the human mannequin and talk about why we're drawing the mannequin and then show you what sort of the next level is in understanding. So when I was sitting sketching, I'm going to draw this person. So I'm just sitting here in class right now. I don't really have anything. I'm just drawing this out of my head. But here's a pose that I was sketching in my sketchbook as we were just, sort of sitting out together. So let me move this over to the center of the page. So, and again, here's one of the benefits of us drawing part of our mannequin shape here, is remember, I started with sort of this head ball. I can come down here, I can get a line of action easily. Okay, by drawing that circle in the mannequin, that circle actually represents, okay, it's not really the waist. It represents this area here. I'm going to draw it from a side version because this is something new that I'm going to be teaching you shortly today. Okay. So what this ball in the middle here really represents is it actually represents part of this distance between the pelvic bone and between the lower sternum. Oh, whoa, that was huge. Let me adjust the brush really quick. That's not good. Hold on, I need to always put this in the middle of the page so I have a better draw on it. And there, now I can adjust this. Okay, sorry about that. So what this ball really represents when we're drawing our mannequin is this shape right in here. You see that right there? That's really important because when you get to the next level of the human figure and you get a better understanding of how to draw it, this is actually a huge area of movement because this right here is part of the spine, which if you look at it, it allows this figure, it allows people to pose and move backward like this, and it also allows it to bend forward. So when you start to move the human figure and draw it, this little circle that's on your mannequin right here that's sort of like in the waist, it's sort of in the mid-region for a reason, is it enables us to think about how the person's bending, okay? So after I sketch this in the pose, okay, if I come over here, what I can do is then it allows me to think about part of the hips. And so part of our hips on our mannequin are going to sort of look like this. It's this very sort of blocky shape. You see that? Okay. Let me back up there. I'm sorry. I enlarged the brush size and then for the eraser, and then it stuck with the pencil, which it's not supposed to do. Like something sort of in the middle. Okay. So basically, I saw this one image of a mom who was like leaning over to the carriage, and she was adjusting her kid in the carriage, and this is what the pose sort of was, right? So when Connor was struggling with this, he sort of didn't know where to start. I came back in and I told him, look, dude, start up here, draw that upper area, or you can start with the head ball, right? Come down in here, get that line of action of what's happening, and then fill it in. And then once I move from here and I move down to that waist, okay, it allows me to see where this this is really part of the pelvic area right here. So if I were to, I'll draw through this in a minute, okay? So because I want to stay back on the mannequin, that if I come through here and then I figure out, next thing I told him is where's her weight right now. It's landing on one leg. Whenever we walk as human beings and as people, we always have one key leg or both legs. It becomes our center mass for holding weight. So as this mom was standing, her key weight leg was this leg right here that sort of came down. Okay, so then if we go back to our mannequin, if you look through, so if I draw through the shape right here on your mannequin, you have these round sort of spheres on your mannequin, right? So then if I come from here and then I draw and I have part of that leg coming down like so, okay? I then have part of the knee, and then I come in here and I have that lower segment, okay? And then I have another sphere again, and then I have the base of the foot that was coming down. So if I come down here and I put that base of the foot, you can see that was that individual's main weight leg standing, okay? This next leg is a secondary leg, which was adjusting to the individual's pose, okay? So this leg was sort of coming forward a little bit more, like this, okay? Kneecap was about here. But then the back of this leg was coming back down, okay, right here, and she was sort of leaning forward, so she had her leg pressed a little bit, the tip of her foot, so her foot was sort of, here's the back, if you look at your mannequin, you have that little foot right there, then it was bent, and it was sort of curving forward a little bit. Does that make sense? Okay, now, if I come back and look at this, I bent that foot in a little bit too much. That foot should have been a little bit more foreshortened, about like this. So this is how she was sort of standing, because she's sort of leaning forward a little bit. So remember, if I draw a dotted line going across on that imaginary grid, that's where the other foot would hit. But if I come forward a little bit like that, that's why that foot was standing a little bit, towards one direction. Because then what she had is she had one of her arms was right here, and this arm was sort of leaning forward right here, and then it was foreshortening as she was reaching into the baby carriage. Okay, so if I come in here and I start to draw some of that, actually, let me back up there for a minute. I'm going to foreshorten that arm more, because the carriage was actually in front of her. The carriage was about here, like this in perspective. Okay, the carriage was about that particular angular point of view, okay? And it actually wasn't that big. It was something about, hold on, it's Monday morning. I could feel it. Because I'm even my perspective. Because the horizon line in this scene was somewhere about right there. So the carriage was here, but it was being foreshortened a little bit, and the carriage was something more sort of about here. So her arm was sort of coming down into a foreshortened point of view, and then her hand was like this, was sort of reaching inside there, okay? As that arm is there, if I draw through part of the shape and I come over here, her other arm was ending about here, which means it was reaching into about here, and then her hand was coming down about here, and she was reaching in. Now, I'm not going to draw the baby, I'm just going to draw the head and part of the body so you can see it. That's how the mom was sort of leaning forward, grabbing that figure. Okay, so one of the things when I was talking with Connor, one of the things that I had noticed is that a majority of his drawings with the mannequin were sort of looking always like this. They were always sort of looking up at the mannequin. We had the waist of the mannequin. We have part of the base, the back of it, and then he had like a leg or two, and then he had maybe the hand on the hip type of thing. Okay, all of his drawings were the mannequin vertical like this. And I sort of made a comment to him, your next phase of your drawing isn't just drawing. People are not always straight up. People are bending over, they're moving, and they're adjusting all the time, okay? So you have to get used to, I'm going to draw it like this. I'm going to sort of explain it. You have to get used to this bend where on your mannequin, you're going to have a point in time. Now I'm going to start from the waist, okay? Where I'm starting from that center ball, which is here, that waist ball. And if you start from here, this is a little bit of a golden secret that allows you to draw people in different positions, okay? So if I want to draw somebody that's bending over towards me, okay, all I have to do is start from that middle bend and come over here, and I basically draw that upper torso of the mannequin like that. You see that? Okay? Then I could come down, and then I could draw their pelvic area that exists in that little area. You see that? So look, there's a little bit of a bend here. So if you think about it, the little tip I wanted to leave you with today is that I want you to think about from a front view and side view that your mannequin sort of has these proportions, okay, like so. And so if you can start to draw people bending and moving in this midsection right here, so let me put a little bit of a line over it, okay, put a center line going around here, dot, 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 comes back there, drops down to the back, comes forward. That's part of that center line right there, of that shape, okay? So you need to think of it from the front of that would be the front of the center line, and then on the back, since we're looking at this at a direct side view, that would be the bend there. So what does that mean for us? Well, what that means is as you get in here and you start drawing somebody, and you have somebody bending, you don't always have to start with, because Connor asked me, do I always have to start with the head ball? No. It helps with gesture, yes. But sometimes part of your job is to facilitate and bring forth all the knowledge you have to be able to draw someone correctly, okay? So one of the problems he was having was breaking out of this pose here, right? He couldn't get out of the straight poses. So what I thought I would talk about today was, well, how do you have to learn how to bend that midsection. So you can see, oops, once I get this individual right here, everything else is easy for me to add in, right? Because all I have to do is I come in here and I draw that center ball, and then from there, I know exactly how the head of the mannequin connects, right? You see that? And I can draw that I'm looking up at it. I can come in here and I can start to throw the arms in. So those of you that are sitting in class right now, do I have a mannequin in front of me? No. I'm drawing the mannequin out of my imagination, right? So I'm drawing this individual here that's posed from a different angle. So if I come over here and then I draw through the shape, I figure their arm. See, I can figure out where that other arm is right here. And I can come over here, I can draw down, I can get to the hands. So that's the front view of my individual. Then as I move downward here, the same thing. I put sort of the round sphere for the leg attachments. Then I come in here. And remember, the right leg was more the straight leg, right? So I can come over here to that right leg, okay? Excuse me, this left leg was the straight leg. So if I come over here, all right, I'm going to make sure that this is sort of that draw a line straight down. So that's that individual's leg. That's sort of right here, right? That was their front. Oh, by the way, hold on. It is Monday morning, because that was out of proportion. That leg should have came down a little bit more to about here, and we had that. And you know what's funny is that I actually am probably a little bit more biased. I tend to draw legs a little longer because I am a tall, someone told me this once and it's true. I'm a taller individual for males. I'm 5'11", almost 6 foot tall. My wife is like 5'9". Okay, in heels she's like 6'1". Okay, and she's tall. So I'm on that taller spectrum versus a lot of my friends are all 5'8". The average height for a female is 5'4". And it all depends on the upper mass and the legs. We all either have lengthy upper masses and short legs or long legs and smaller masses up. Usually balances out that way. So I was actually drawing somebody that might have been a little bit shorter there. Then as that individual's leaning forward, right? Remember this leg had a bend in it right there, right? So now I could come in here and I can draw part of that leg right here with the bend in it. Okay, and then I could have part of that leg coming forward like so. And I could be really particular. I could have had it land a little bit more, or I could adjust part of my foreshortening, but this is basically what part of that poses, is that individual is leaning forward. Okay, so the reason why I'm showing this to you is that today's a good day to talk about this bend right here that's happening here. So anytime I want to draw somebody that has a bend, instead of going to the head ball, now I jump in and I need to think about how the upper torso is interacting with their lower pelvic bone. Does that make sense? So for example, let me come over here. All right. So let's say I have somebody that's going to be sitting in a figure drawing class and they are sitting on some type of square module, like, you know, a box or whatever. Okay. One of the first things I'm going to do here is I look at the model and I come right in here, folks, and I'm going to try to get that center mass, which remember, the center mass that I'm drawing right here is this center mass that represents the space between the lower, and we'll talk about it in a second, why I do the circle. There's a reason for it, because that upper mass of the torso and the rib cage is shaped basically in like an egg, and part of the egg is cut off. So the upper torso and the sternum and the ribs tends to move like on a round shape, and I'll show you that in a couple of minutes, okay? Let me come back to this. So I start with this line right here, and then what I do is then I try to get part of the gesture. Now, again, I'm drawing this in relationship to part of my horizon line here, right? So if I have somebody who's sitting down here, they're leaning forward a little bit, okay? I can come in here and I look at part of my shape of my mannequin and I get that in there, right? Then I look at their lower hips. So maybe part of their hips are coming in here like this, right? And then they're sitting down on their gluteus maximus, right, which is their butt, okay? So that's part of that pose of that individual. The only thing that adjusts is on our mannequin. Let me draw it here from a side view for you. On our mannequin, these little circles that are here at the bottom that the leg's attached to, I move those a little bit. I actually sway them back and forth between the front or the bottom. The reason why is that if this is your gluteus maximus, your butt and your legs down, it's like this. But if your leg pitches forward and goes like this, you see what happens? This is why I take this little circle shape here and then I move it up like this towards the front. Does that make sense? Because I can raise my leg back and forth, okay? I can adjust in that leg. This circle mass right here is how I mount the front of the cylinder that's on top of your mannequin, right? So if I come back over here and I sketch like this, and then I look through this and I sketch the other leg here, I already have a basis for how that cylinder is going to attach to the human figure. Do you see that? So then I come here and I draw that elliptical shape, and then I bring this leg out. Sorry, I like it in the same color. Oh, it's Monday. I'm going to keep saying that there. It's here blue about there. So then I can get this leg in about here. Do you see that? Then I could come over here. Now, and I could make decisions. I've had models that have like stretchy legs where maybe this individual has most of their leg hanging over the other end here. Do you see that? Like that. Their legs are sort of spread as they're standing. So in this pose, I'm going to pretend that the right arm is going down to the knee and the other left arm is raised in the air like they're reaching for somebody. Okay, so what I'm going to do is first I'm going to sketch in part of the knee joints. I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to get down part of the base of that foot. Remember, just a little perspective guideline, that if I have this line receding back this way to a vanishing point, I can gauge that this foot is a little off and the foot should be ending right about there. So I know the base of that foot's going to be about there, and then I know the foot's going to be ending about so, like that right there. Okay? Same thing on this leg. Now here's the importance. This is why we talk about drawing through the shape. If I draw through right here, I understand where that shape is, right? I have the other leg here. I need to understand accurately where that other leg is going to be hitting the ground. So if I come over here and if I look at that foot and draw a dotted line going this way, I have a better idea of where it's going to be. So if I come over here and I draw this individual's foot, I know the base of their heel should be basically about right here somewhere. Does that make sense? Okay, so then I could come over and figure out, well, that's about their ankle joint. So this part of the leg is actually being foreshortened and will come down here, and then from here will be part of that back. Actually, it extends a little bit more, and then I can have the base of the foot like this. Does that make sense? So you can see how it starts to work in perspective. The only difference is here is then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to have this arm coming down to the knee with the other arm in the air. One thing happens. Every one of you do this right now. Lean on your right arm and then raise your arm like this. And what happens when I raise my arm? What's the angle now of my upper torso? It's tilted. You see it? By me raising my arm. So I could do this pose like this, but that looks a little bit more congested. So what I mean by that is this. Let me put it on another layer and I'll turn it off. If I draw this pose right now in the human figure, and I have this guy's arm sitting on his leg and his hand sort of hanging down, and then I come over here and I sketch the arm up like this, okay, like so. You see that? It feels a little stiff because this is staying straight right there, okay? So something that I learned when I was a wrestler in high school is that if you grab someone's appendages, which are their arms, and you pull them left or right, it throws their shoulders to the left or to the right. That's something that I've always remembered for figure drawing, okay? Why is that important to me? Hold on, technical difficulties. That's important to me because as I'm drawing the human figure here, I need to think about those tilts because that ball in the lower leg stays in that position, right? So I need to think about the relationship of how the arms, look at what happens when I move my arms to the left or to the right. I'm doing like the YMCA pose, right? Every time I move it, I'm shifting and counter-angling part of my body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of a tilt on this individual's torso like so. See, like this. Because this makes more sense to me now, doesn't it? That if I have somebody's arm that's right here that's being foreshortened, it's landing on part of their leg, let's say their hands sort of hanging forward like this. See, this is what I was talking about that makes more sense. Then I have this the upper arm coming forward like this into the air, right? See how that works? Okay, and then I have their hand like here, like so. See how that makes sense? Because I'm raising that upper arm, they're going to have a tilt in their body. So I think about those things when I'm drawing, and I'll get to that in a little bit later. Then it's easy. I just draw through my shape. I put in that sphere right here that would be the base of the neck, and then I come over here, and then I just put the individual's head attached as the wooden mannequin, right? So again, I just sketch that person super quick out of my head, and when I come back here and I analyze them in red, boom, there's that line of action that comes down. And that right there, folks, is extremely important because that gives me the proper proportions. You see that? So when you start drawing people and you want to start bending them and exaggerating their gesture, one of the things that's going to help you is it's going to be extremely beneficial for you to think about your individual and how they react to, actually, let me come back here, and how this mid-torso area reacts as it is bending. Because you can see that's really huge. So if I go in here and if I decide to bend somebody this way, or if I decide to bend them this way, or if I decide to have somebody leaning forward drastically, do you see that? It's just bending. We could actually bend back depending on how flexible you are. You do have a set of lower muscles in your back known as the spinalis muscles that allow you to bend all the way back. And as you're bending back, what muscles keep you from flopping backwards and snapping your head on the ground? Part of your abdominal muscles here in the front. So as you're leaning back, your back muscles will pivot and stop, but then your muscles in the front of your torso, your abdominal muscles will then react and they counteract. Remember, I told you everything in the human body is based on a system of pulling and pushing. So you have muscles that always counteract each other. If you have a muscle that pulls you back, you have another muscle that pushes you the other way. Okay, all right, so let's come back here. So now, these guys are sketching part of your mannequins. I noticed when I was walking around, a lot of you had these poses. These were sort of these stiff poses where your mannequin really isn't really doing anything, okay? Well, now it's time for us to move into another genre. It's now time for us to think about more dynamic poses and being able to draw that person or individual from a different point of view. One thing that's going to help you with this is if you just sit and do this, okay? You just sit here and you do this. I'm going to call it an L. Watch. See that? I'm going to put an L there. I'm going to put an L here. I'm going to come over and I'm going to put an L there like that, okay? So every time you have an L, what I basically did, you remember when we talked about in this class, we talked about different drawing methods. We talked about additive and subtractive methods of drawing, and then I introduced you to another one, which was called centerline approach. This is the benefit of the centerline. What I just did right there was I threw down a basic centerline, okay? Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go counter to this like this. You see that? In some of my drawing classes, I talk about this thing called a T. The T is what anchors somebody to a ground plane, okay? And this is what it is. The T is basically perpendicular. The reason why this is important for me now is this, is I can come in here anywhere, and all I have to do is throw a circle in here like that, and make sure that circle is pretty much lining up for here, for that line of action, like so, and then I could come in there and I could expand off of that. So if I want to have somebody sitting down Indian style, now I could come in here, and I basically come into part of my mannequin, and I'm going to draw part of their hips, sitting down like so. You see that? And now I can draw their upper torso. So I can come in here, all right, like that. Boom. I have somebody now sitting. I can draw through part of my shape really quick, so I know how my shapes are working, like so. Okay? That's that. So let me go over it really quick. This is that shape, that L I just basically drew for you. It's right in there. Do you see it? Okay, there's a purpose for that. So then I'm going to come back here. We'll talk about this when I'll draw somebody posed there and somebody posed here. I should have spread them out a little bit, but I'm running out of paper, so that's all right. So, well, you can't really run out of digital paper, but you know what I mean. So anyway, so what I'm going to do now, this person's sitting Indian style, right? So look, all I have to do is I come up here. Remember I talked about this part of the mannequin being able to move from front to back, right? So I'm going to move that front forward a little bit because basically this person is sitting on part of their butt. Part of that's right there. Part of it's right here. So they're going to have a leg that's going to go up about right here. Their other leg is going to go up about right here. Okay. Then if I come over and draw their knee, I can draw part of their other leg coming through. Their ankle is going to be about right here. With that ankle there, they're going to have the base of their foot being about right here. Does that make sense? Okay. Then after that leg, I can draw that knee, and I can get a better idea that that leg being foreshortened is going to come in about like so. Okay. All right. So you see how I have that now? I have the basics of somebody sitting there. Now I just have to decide what they're doing, right? Let's say they're sitting up and they're sketching somebody, right? So I come over here, I draw part of that, the base for the head. I come over here and I decide the direction that I want part of that head to go into, okay? So I come over here, I draw the sockets for the arms, right? Draw through your shape, make sure they're matching up. Okay, I come over here, I'm going to draw an arm coming forward that's being a little bit foreshortened. I draw that elbow that's in there, and then say I'm going to come in here, I'm going to draw a hand about there, their arm about there. I'm going to try to get part of, let's say, part of the hands in about here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, maybe they have a sketchbook that's open. My sketchbook looks a little bit like so. See that? Okay? So it looks good enough to be realistic, right? And this is out of my head. This is for years of drawing proportions and thinking about how things hook up and trying to give you guys a couple notes. So now the hand. Oh my God, hands. I can't draw hands. Look at the mannequin. The hand is this. It's the greatest hand ever. Simple. You know why that's the greatest hand ever? It's because when you get a little bit more advanced, you just do this. And you put on the knuckle joint, and then you just attach the finger. And then you split this into 3 parts. See that? And then you get the fingers. That's how it starts to work. But before we complicate that, let's go back to our basics. That's all we need is that. It's a little wedge. So I come in here. I'm going to cheat it. I'm going to draw the wrist, right? I'm going to imagine part of this wedge shape bending a little bit. I'm going to put a pencil in the guy's hand. And I have sort of the wedge shape like it's coming this way. See that? Like we're holding a pencil. And then I'm going to make sure I'm drawing through the shape. That arm would come to about there. There would be the joint, and then it would connect here. So I'm really just going to get a little bit of an indication of that shoulder, and that's it. So that's my individual now as they're sitting down. Okay? But you see that L that I did? So then I could come back over here. Let's do the same thing. So I throw in a circle right there, about there. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put that lower pelvic area. It's going to be sort of chunked up about right there. Okay? And then I'm going to have, coming off here, part of that upper torso is going to be somewhere about there. Does that make sense? Okay? So even though I know someone could be like, well, your center line's off, it's okay. You can see it right there. You get the point. You have the L. You have the bend shape in there, right? You see it in there. It's coming through here, going back. You see the L in there, right? Okay, now it's just me adding the rest of the pose. So this might be somebody who's sitting on part of the ground, and they have an elbow like this, right? Hitting the ground. They have their forearm here. They have their hand sitting like this. So after their midsection comes up, they might have, now this is where I need to think a little bit about how I want to define some of this. So they come down here, they have a little bit of a bend. I have a leg here. Maybe their leg is, you know what, I had an idea. What if, I'm going to split this lower and lower this one. What if this leg goes up a little bit? So it's just going straight, connects to about here, and then goes over the other leg. Because I see people resting like this casually, like in a park. Okay, then their foot is about here. And so then I'm going to lower that one a little bit. And then I'm going to have this, looks like it's sort of supporting right about in there. Okay. Like so. There. So they have one leg up, the other one going over it. Maybe they're just sort of sitting here, looking up at the sky, talking to somebody, and they see somebody know, and they're raising their hand up. Hey, Jimmy! You know, and they're like, they have their arm going up a little bit, like so. And if you want to throw that thumb in there, Jimmy, over here! See that? That's it. It's just casual. So it goes back to that bend that I put in there. Okay? So as your instructor, when I walked around and was looking at some of your guys' sketches, I noticed that some of you guys are stuck on this, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. you're stuck on this sort of, you did the head ball, you come in here and you have a gesture maybe like this with a weight leg. And that's fine, but now it's time to think about bending that torso. Okay, so with that, I want to lead you to the beginning of another discussion here, which I wasn't really, I wanted to introduce, so it's important to talk about it, is the next step is once you've nailed these proportions down and you can basically draw, your goal right now should be able to draw your mannequin from any position out of your brain. And I know some of you might not be there yet, but look, this is what I'm doing. I'm just drawing people posing here and moving around, and I'm just drawing what I see. I take what I see and I draw the proportions that I know, match it together. Everything else after this is detail. Did the guy have a hat on? Did the woman have a big, large top hat with a flower? Was it a tight dress? Does the person need to go to the gym because their clothes are too tight and I can see their spare tire hanging out, right? Whatever it is, right? Those are all little secondary details that just fit on top of the mannequin, okay? One of the things that's going to help you besides this little L is if you get an understanding for this, and this is what I like about this particular method, okay? What I like about this, and I'll give credit where it's due, is I learned this from a gentleman by the name of Don Lagerberg. Don taught myself and Justin Sweet, who's a famous concept artist, right? Who was my buddy in school, right? He taught us how to draw the figure, and he was pretty dang good at it. Marshall taught us a lot about, Marshall Vanderf taught us a lot about anatomy and stuff, but here's the thing that he taught us was this. You have this, the sternum, human sternum, looks something like this. And you have a vertebrae that comes down part of that sternum, and you have part of the angle of the hips like this. Now, everyone has different hips, okay? But this was key because when you go to draw this in different pose, this is how he taught us, is that you can now draw this, and if you had somebody arching, it gave you a better understanding of how that rib cage connected in there. You see that? So what this does is in drawing is it does a couple different things. Number one, it helps you establish that you have a top line, and then you can see that there's an underneath line here. See that distance from there to there? And also helps establish that you have a side here, and then on the other side you have that side there. That's really important in understanding because I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I noticed it. When I was drawing people sitting sometimes, I caught myself starting to come in here, and then I would, take that vertebrae and I'd throw it, and then I would draw part of their upper torso like this. See that? And what that's done is it's been able, I have that bend in that torso, which gets me to think about the front. Because on the front of somebody's chest, you have this. Remember, you have your, I don't know if you guys have done this, but I did this recently. What's right here in the middle? It's part of your osteology, your bone structure of your body that's flexible in the middle here. It's a series of, it's a sternum, okay, that's in here that's allows you to press in. That's how we do compressions on somebody's chest if we have to do CPR. Okay, so part of the ribs, when you have part of this here, part of the ribs break off. Now, I know this isn't an bone structure class. I'm just showing how this relates to drawing because it enables me to think about the back side like this. And see that? Brings me right down to the butt, and that's part of a line of action that goes to a leg. At the same time, it allows me to think about where the front side proportions are. You see that? That's going to be extremely helpful for me when drawing the figure. Okay, so let me erase some of this. So one of the next steps, now it's funny, I remember when I was in this class with Don Lagerberg back in the day, I remember I had a student next to me who would get all technical and he goes, well, aren't you just like doing a V? You're doing a V there and then an upside down V. And I'd be like, well, I guess that's what he's doing if you want to think of it like that. Because if you think about it, you could draw a line of action in here and then you could come by like this. Do you see how quick that is? And then now this represents the lower hips. And you have part of the vertebrae that goes up here and connects. And then from here, you have your, basically, your rib cage sort of attaching in here. So you can think of it like that if you want to. okay? Because then you have the sides here. And see, and then you can come in here, and if you know anything about anatomy, and you start pushing all this together, and you start overlapping part of the form, you start to see it. Also, on a side note, okay, and this is something I like to mention sort of at this phase in drawing. Someone debated this with me the other day and said there are more than 7, but I learned it as 7. There are 7 key bony landmarks on the human figure that are always there that indicate the pronunciation of bone coming through the skin, okay? One of them on an individual is right up here. It's called the 7th vertical vertebrae. If you take your hand and touch, you feel a bump right up here, okay? That's a hinge joint that then goes forward, and the reason I call it a hinge joint is people that are really old do this. And they lean forward, and they get that huge, like if you draw an old lady, they have that 7th vertical vertebrae, and then their necks look like they're going like this. That makes sense? Okay? But that's huge for me. I need to remember that because when I'm drawing somebody and sketching someone, one of the things I do is I sketch in part of this upper torso, and then I get their rib cage, and then I think about part of the position of their hips and what their hips are doing. Do you see that? That really aids in part of my flow. See, now I have that upward look, and now I just put the arms in there. Do you see how much that starts to feel like the human figure already? I haven't even drawn the gesture or anything else yet. I just have this in there. Look, this is just skin. It's basically, this is what your human figure is. The only difference is, do you look like that? Or do you go to in and out, and do you look like that? That's really the only difference right there when you go to bend, and trust me, I know. Okay? Because I can fluctuate body mass really quickly because I was a wrestler, right? So when I work out and walk and go for runs, I shed 10 pounds very quickly. And then there are times when I stop working out and I get busy at school and I start going to In-N-Out Burger and eating things I shouldn't eat. And then I go lean forward to tie my shoes and I have this right here. Okay? But you see how that's sort of cool? That you could literally add that to the individual that you're drawing. And then here's something else that we learned is that, you know, you actually, the way that part of the bones are attached is you have sort of a hip joint in here that attaches part of your leg. And then from here, you have your kneecap, and then you have your tibia and your fibia that comes down. All right, and then from here, you have the human foot, which is developed over a series of metacarpal bones in there, right? But you see how this brings into the figure? Okay, this is part of our next step. So when I'm drawing somebody, don't forget, on Wednesday or Monday, I'm still going to try to do another demo for you on human hands. I was going to do that on heads today, but I sort of noticed this problem with some of you guys drawing, and I thought I'd cover it in a demo for you. Here's a little secret that I do and I'll talk about the human head for a second here. Here's a little secret that I do on the human head. You see how I have the head pose there? Look at that figure in relationship to the horizon line. I'm looking up at what? I'm looking underneath the human face right now, right? So you know what I do? Check this out. Someone taught me this, and I'll never forget it. First of all, the neck attaches to the base of the human skull, right? And then right about here, you have a human ear. And then guess what you have right after that ear? Right here, you have the front of a jawbone, which means you have that right there. See that? Means look right here. And see this? You have a plane. It's a facial plane, which is your jaw. So when I'm sketching somebody, all I have to do is come in here and sketch that right there, and bam, they know exactly what I'm looking at very quickly. It's identified part of the perspective of that human figure, correct? See how I did that really quick? Then, here's another little secret, okay? Look at the proportions. Watch. So let me teach you this really quick. If you look at the human ears, and if I bring the human ears over like this, all noses are the same size as your ears, okay? My dad is Greek, and he's got a big old Greek schnoz that could be a sundial, okay? And with that, he has ears that match the same proportions. So if you come over here, and you bring these lines from the base of the ear, and you bring that right over, it's the start of the nose, and you go to the earlobe, and you bring it right across, and it's usually right here at the base of that little philtrum right there. So I know right here that nose is going to be about right there. Do you see that? Another part of the puzzle is filled in, okay? Then the human lips, they slant a little bit out this way. They come back in a little bit here, and then you have sort of the chin that's right in there, right? And then right in here then, you have a plateau on the face. That plateau is your cheek. It's your upper cheek. So then you might have part of the eye socket that's right in here, right? And then you have part of the jump of the skull, which connects back here, okay? I know I could give a whole nother lecture on that. I'm just throwing some of that out to you, but let me go back a couple steps. The reason why I'm showing this is when I'm sketching somebody and I get to this right here, this is key for me because that's all I really need in part of my sketch is that understanding of how that skull is coming in and connecting to that human figure. Does that make sense? And again, this is why I told you whenever we're sketching people, we always have to be considered and considerate about our horizon line. I just get tired of always drilling that into your noggins, right? But you can see here what I'm doing. That makes sense, right? So you can see that not only am I sketching the person in here very quickly, look, the rest of this is like connect the dots. It's just deciding how flabby is this person or non-flabby. You know, maybe one leg is here and it's like leaning back. If that's the case, I would have to adjust this foot because the foot would not be out. The foot would be moving forward because this individual's leg would be slightly foreshortened. And maybe their foot is like in this position. You see that? Okay. So all I got to do is fill the rest of that in, and then I just got to bring the arms in. Bring the arm down to part of the elbow. I come in here, and I get into part of the hand, and I just stick with my basic hand. That's fine. Okay. So here's our lesson for today. I'm going to call this your mid-torso, right? So we talked about, just to reiterate, we talked about that L. If you're doing the L in a pose, and the L doesn't always have to be at a 90-degree angle, the L could be like this. Your L could be at an obtuse angle. This is greater than 90, right? So remember, that's 90. Okay, that means obtuse. This means acute. So if you think about that, think about these are the poses. This is somebody sitting, right? This is somebody leaning. This is somebody moving back. Okay, so if I were to throw a couple little ideas at you and say, hey, if I'm stopping to pick something up on the ground, what pose is my dynamic torso going to be in? Which one? 1, 2, or 3? 1, 2, or 3. What's the person doing? They're stopping to pick something up. They're going to be in number 3. They're stopping. You put your weight out, you lean forward, and they're reaching down to pick up a dime on the ground. You're going to be in number 3. Okay? I'm sketching somebody who is sitting in a chair and they're yawning. What do you do when you yawn? And you pull your arms up and you lean back because you're stretching. You're going to be in pose number 1 here. Not to that extreme, maybe a little bit more like that, but you still be in number 1. Okay? What about somebody who's sitting down at In-N-Out Burger having a hamburger and drinking from their shake? They're going to be in pose number 2. So in some way, I always start to think about, before I draw the human figure, outside of the gesture line and all that, I start thinking about what is their torso doing and how is it interacting. So if I have somebody with a line like this, I can come over here, I can throw part of my circle in, I can come up here, I can put most of these proportions that are in here relevant to the human figure, and then I can decide how I want their waist to be. Is this person sitting like on their hip, where one side of their hip is on the ground, and then they have a leg that's coming out like so? Maybe they have a leg that's, you see how it fits together so easily? It's like the golden gem of drawing and sketching people, is understanding these basics. Okay, so maybe it's not that way. Let me go back a couple steps. Maybe this individual is not on one hip, but maybe part of their waist is being turned here, right? And we might see something more like this. Oops. See that? Maybe there's a little bit of a turn in their waist, and they're like, this is the stretch pose where like you're reaching over. See, I'm twisting here, where here's part of their line and gesture, and then their body's twisting into that direction. You see that? So I can sketch somebody like this. So maybe this leg's going forward like this, and it's coming here, And then maybe this leg from here is, I don't know, maybe it's just going straight across, whatever, right? And this one's overlapping it, like so. That could be a change of the hips, okay? Let's go back. Hopefully I have a lot of undos on here. Oh, I don't, so I didn't like this one as much. But there is going to be a limitation on how far I can twist and contort that center mass that's here, okay? So what if, before I had them on the hip, what if they're sitting on a chair? So if I do that, look, they're on their butt. So they're flat like this right now. Do you see that? Then I have a leg that's going to join here. So look, draw the chair. Come in here, draw the base of the chair. That's a horrible ellipse, by the way. We're going to draw a cylinder just real quick and pretend that that's there. Okay. Now I have a leg that's going to come sort of like this. I'm going to have a knee that's going to drop off. I'm going to come down. Maybe the foot's like that. You see how I drew that? So do you see I just gave you 3 options of how you can adjust the hips on that. So this is key as you guys are drawing. I want you to think about this today as you move forward and you keep sketching. I know we only have a week and a half of school left. This is why, in my opinion, to me, you know, this is such imperative stuff to learn, is that we have to talk about basic drawing techniques. At the same time, we also have to start talking about how the human form exists. Here's one of my questions for you guys. Is it me talking about all this? Some of you, how many in you here have had figure drawing before? All of you? Have you had instructors talk about this stuff with you? No? And this is what frustrates me as a teacher, is that I come from a drawing background where I was taught by actually members of this school, okay, back in the day, who are not here anymore, that have since retired, to understand shape and form. And shape and form is the ability to take boxes and basic shapes and move them around and contort them around. So one of the only differences that I've really learned in drawing that affects anything is adding what I call maybe a hinge or a rubber band to something. Okay, so if I add a hinge or a rubber band, okay, I get, if I add a hinge here, what I get now is a torso. I get upper torso and lower hips that are, oops, I hate it when that happens, that are connected to each other, okay? So that's it. So as you guys go forward and you start sketching, if you're starting to get tired of your mannequin, I want you to come in and try what Phil talked about here. Try coming in here and just throwing in that L and see what happens. And then try throwing in that upper torso and just make it like a real simple base shape like this if you want. Okay, and then you can throw the circle in here, and then you could come in here, and we throw the hips in. Remember that are like V's, like that. Boom. That right there, it's sort of like a modeled or smoothed over version of the figure. Once we get that in, everything else now all starts to make sense. Where now you can see where these lines of the circle that were on your mannequin actually start to make up the shape of the gluteus maximus, right? And then the legs, they start to come through, and you start really getting a good opportunity seeing how things really start to connect and how figures start to really come together, okay? Like so. So look, I can just sit right now and just draw all I want, and I'm not looking at the human figure. I'm just figuring out my proportions, and I've understood my proportions enough because I can just draw the basics and understand the distance between the shoulder to the elbow to the arm. And I can understand if, you know, hey, maybe this other arm is reaching forward like this, and this person's reaching up here, they have their hand on their knee, and their head's tilted forward a little bit. That's all I have to understand right there, is that. Everything else is me just filling in part of the shapes, okay? All right, guys, thanks for watching and tuning in. I hope this helps you out quite a bit as you move forward. So just remember, let me just draw over this to talk about this shape right here. Think of this. See that? It's like a rib cage shape. Okay? That rib cage has a dedicated, okay, vertebrae that connects, and you have on your hips right here, if you want to think of them like this, it's just this V. Okay? That's it. So in simple terms, drawn from a side view, you have an egg that's been sliced. Take off part of that egg right there. You put the vertebrae down. You come in here and you put a V in here. Okay? And that'll be part of our our next lesson, unless I do a demo just on hands. That's it. That's what that is. That's the shape. That's what we move to when we leave the mannequin. That's next. And the great thing about this, did you catch something here? Is when I throw that circle in here and that circle in there, so you know why those are so pivotal? Because look, when I draw that in three-dimensional, and if I slice this right here, and I cut that shape like that, you see that? Okay. All I have to do is come up here and throw that circle in there, which tells me what? This here is that hookup for the shoulder. And once I know that, I know exactly how to find that on the other side. I can draw it through like that. See that? I get the proportions. Then I can come in here. I can throw the vertebrae in. I can come in here and I can throw in the base of the hips as a shape. And then I can put that in. So if I have somebody that's now, sorry, I drew that really quick. That should connect into about right there. But now if I have someone that's over here and they're reaching for something like so, and they have their legs coming like this, going back to here, you see how it makes sense? And not only does it make sense, look at what it does for my ability to throw gestures in. See that? I start to get really, really quick. I have the ability to come in and figure out how to get gesture sketching in. See that? Look at that. That's a quick gesture. It just took me a couple seconds. So you can now make that transition into this right here. Okay? I don't know what officially to call it. You know, it's basically the torso as a egg and I'm going to call it the V pelvic. That's all it is. But then when I'm getting into a figure and sketching point of view, now it's where all the fun starts to happen. See? I can quickly draw people and gestures, and my ability to sketch just jumped up tremendously. Okay? All right, guys. Thanks for watching.